Hello, my name is Roger Widener. I'm a former attorney, public prosecutor. In 1998, I was the Oregon Reform Party candidate for governor. For the last 26 years, I and hundreds, perhaps thousands of other people around the state and around the country have been doing everything in our power to restore to the citizenry of this state and this country clean constitutional courts and government. By constitutional courts, I mean courts where the citizens' rights to equal protection and due process of law are observed at all times when they appear in the courts of this state and this country. What I've been fighting for the last 26 years is a totally corrupted judicial process. I had no idea when I got into this years ago the extent of the corruption. As a former attorney and public prosecutor in 1965 and 6, I was the director of the Consumer Fraud Department in the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. I worked with and know many of the judges at the time. I had judges telling me when I got into this fight over 25 years ago, "Oh, you're going to fight him, huh, Roger? This ought to be interesting." Judges telling me about this level of corruption that has been going on in our court systems. And what I came to find out was that Judge Harlow Lennon told me that he saw it coming into the courts in the early 70s, and that's when Lee Johnson was our Attorney General, a totally corrupted, completely corrupted individual. I've confronted Lee Johnson in his courtroom about his corruption, charged him, pointing the finger at him, and he's ordered my arrest and got up and run out of the courtroom. I've taken his deposition and said to him, I said, "You're the most corrupt, incompetent judge in the United States, Judge Johnson. I'm prosecuting." He said, "I'm not going to answer that." So that is the culture of corruption that has been going on in our court system now for quite a while. And what I have noticed, because of the efforts of myself and my guest and Ed Snook with the Oregon Observer and Dal Ferry and many others, is that I've seen a changed behavior from my perspective now when I'm going into these courtrooms with these crowds of people. The corruption problem is still there, and what set this up, what I was told by those that have some insight into it, was that in the 1960s, when they adopted the Uniform Commercial Code, the Oregon State Bar created its own insurance company, and attorneys and judges told me they saw it coming in after that. And what happened when they had private insurance carriers, they would pay off about 50% of the premium in claims. When the bar created its own insurance company, they pay off about 3 or 4% to the victims. All the rest of the money goes to attorneys who are defending the crooked attorneys who are stealing innocent people's property. That is the dynamic that is set up. Lee Johnson was right in the middle of that. And so many of these, Claude Ingram, these crooked attorneys that I've been going after, confronting them openly in the courtroom. They're running out of the courtroom, hiding, peeking out of the doors when I have gone into the courthouses. I confronted Judge Keyes, who I knew as when I was in the district attorney's office. He and I were in there together 40 years ago, and when I got involved in this, he said, "Everyone in the courthouse knows that Widener's nuts." And when I confronted him about that, he got up. I said, "Keyes, come here. I want to talk to you about this." And he ran down the hall, the judge, big 260, 70 pounds of him, onto the elevator. I went up and I held the doors open and said, "Keyes, come here. I want to talk to you." And he was standing, the judge, in the back with his head turned sideways doing this. When I confronted Judge Peterson in the courtroom because of his corrupt behavior in the past, I said, "I've named you Judge Peterson, and aiding and abetting." He said, "Mr. Widener, I'm going to let you make your record and go in the back room, but first I'm going to let these other people speak." And when he got through, he said he was closing the courtroom. I said, "You are not closing the courtroom. People do not leave this courtroom." When I said that, Peterson and the 3 attorneys got up and they ran out of the courtroom. The people saying, "Look, the crooks running out of the courtroom." Guard came up to me, "Megalinis, Roger, please leave or we'll have to arrest you." I said, "Arrest me, Megalinis. I'm going to make a record." My mother standing there with her fist clenched, 83-year-old Frances Widener, 85 pounds. "You're going to arrest me too with fire in her eye?" He said, "No, I'm not going to arrest you." She said, "Where is he?" Out the door. And my mother went out the door chasing him. Came back a few minutes later panting because she had chasing him the judge out of the courthouse. Now people, this is not what we pay them to do. These courthouses belong to the people. The courthouse, its primary function is to store public records. Nothing is a legal fact until it's typed up, date stamped, and filed with the clerk of the court. You don't have to be an attorney to do that. It has to be in the right form. If it's not in the right form, the attorneys that you're naming will move to, where they strain at gnats and they swallow camels. Whatever little defect you have, they will look to dismiss it. So it has to be in the right form. And then when you go into that courtroom, people, the courthouse and courtroom belong to you. The judge is a neutral. His oath of office says that he will fairly and impartially, he's a neutral, hear the case. They have not been doing that because of the enormous the exposure. They have been protecting the thieves and attacking the victims. So I have, as my guest today, Sandra Tabb. She's an activist that has been out there taking on this corruption that's going on in the system, fighting it in her own way. And she was the former city council at Wilsonville in 2000, from 2001 to 2005, and she was arrested in a courthouse. And Sandra, go ahead and introduce yourself. Anything else you want to say? Just watch where the light is and speak to the camera.
Hello. Again, my name is Sandra Tabb, and I have probably been aware and awake to what's been going on and all the corruption that's been happening in the judicial system. But I really got an awakening when I went to Newport Beach, where a friend of mine lives. And upon coming home, I got stopped by a police officer who said that I was speeding. And I didn't have my license. I had a license that had been, well, the DMV had recalled it because they messed up on it, and it had a hole punch in it. And I told the officer, I can't give you this license. I don't have a license. In other words, I don't have a valid license. And he pushed and pushed, but he says, well, I can put you in jail. I can arrest you for for you not giving me a license. And I said, I didn't know what to say. I mean, I was really taken aback. And then I noticed in my rearview mirror that 2 other police cars had come up behind, and they both got 2 officers in each car, and they both got out. All 4 of them got out of the car, and they're in full SWAT gear, and they're standing behind the car. And so the officer says, I want you to get out of the car. And I said, I'm not getting out of the car. And he said, I want you to get out of the car now. And so I said, no, I'm not getting out of the car. So, I held onto the steering wheel. And he literally grabbed me and pulled me out, threw me down on the hood of his car, and he said, do you want me to read you your rights? And I said, obviously, I have no rights. I have no rights. If you can do this, then obviously I have no rights at all. And he proceeded to take me to the
jail.
Yeah, to the jail, and they kept me there for, I don't know, 8 hours, I think, which I think legally they can only keep you there for 5 without a charge. I wasn't even charged with anything until they finally let me out of the cell. And that was interfering with a police officer, which was a law made specifically if you've committed a crime and you have an officer, a parole officer, then if you don't do what they say, they can put you back in jail or whatever. It's not meant for a regular traffic stop. It just never has been.
This is what has been so hard. It's been hard for me to understand what is going on, and I had to get hit over the head several times. I've been arrested as a former attorney and public prosecutor. As I said, nearly 40 years ago, I was the government. I ran the Consumer Fraud Department in the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. Judges, one of them used to clerk for me, John Whitmire. Others I knew socially and had a friendly relationship with him. Many of those told me they couldn't wait to get out of the system, that they saw this corruption coming into the system in the early 70s when then Attorney General Lee Johnson became a judge. And it's this, been this incredible level of corruption where where the judges are protecting the thieves and arresting the victims. When the victim tries to speak about their injury in court, they're being attacked, arrested violently. As I said, I've been arrested 23 times, many of those times in court, trying to speak like this on the record as a former attorney, public prosecutor, about innocent people in this community having their children, having their property, having their freedom stripped from them by a gang of treacherous, thieving bureaucrats and attorneys. I said, everyone, people, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. In this country, for 220 plus years, in this state, for 150 plus years, we have a single class of citizens, all equal before the law. Those that are working are divided into two groups, public employees and private employees. If they're a public employee and elected or appointed to their public office, like all of these judges, all of these sheriff's deputies, all of these administrators are, I was an administrator, I know what I'm talking about. When I became the head of the Consumer Fraud Department, when in the district, I had to take an oath of office.
Yeah.
And the oath of office that you take is that you will uphold and defend the constitutional rights of the citizens, your employers, when you officially interact with them. So if you have a suspicion officer that someone has committed a criminal act, if you didn't catch him in the act of doing it, but you have evidence, you give them a charge, an indictment. If you catch them in doing the act, you arrest them if they're committing a criminal act. When I was in the district attorney's office, police would come in often. They would have arrested someone. They arrested you. And they would say, well, I've arrested so-and-so for such and such. And I said, well, Smith, why did you arrest? Well, they were giving me the finger or something, or doing something. I said, well, Smith, I'm not going to file a complaint against anyone for that. So they would bring you in the next day from jail. They said, there's been no complaint, you're free to go. Now that's how this, and the judge is a neutral.
That's how it should be.
That's what he is supposed to be. That's what I was so fortunate when I went through college and law school at Northwestern. I had as instructors Thomas Tongue, who's in fact my attorney on a case, and Bill Dale, who's a magistrate. Robert Jones was an instructor of mine. He was later on the Oregon Supreme Court. Harlow Lennon was an instructor of mine. And so I knew all of these judges, and I certainly know what their job is. And what their function is to see that the citizens' rights are observed, that the law is upheld and the rights are observed. That's what we have, what's called due process of law. And it's that, Sandra, that I have seen, that's been so shocking to me, that the arrogance. When I was taken in before Judge Dorothy Baker, I had, in Judge Peterson's courtroom, when I had confronted him, and he ran out of the courtroom. Then they charged me, and they tried me in Judge Dorothy Baker's courtroom. And when she came in, she said, have you read the reports? I said, these are sham proceedings, Dorothy. You make your record. I'm here as a foreman of a special grand jury to make mine. She says she was sentencing me to 3 years probation. The courtroom is closed. And I said, the courtroom is not closed, people. Do not leave this courtroom. She ran down the steps, the judge, and I heard the door lock as she went in the back. So I'm standing there talking to the crowd like I'm talking to you now about what's going on in this system. Innocent people having their children, their property stolen by these treacherous, thieving bureaucrats and attorneys. And while I was doing that, the Megalinis, the sheriff's deputy, he was over peeking through the door while I was speaking, wasn't trying to interfere. And all of a sudden, because I had all these people, and the back door opened up, and out walked these 12 red-faced police officers who were hiding in the jury room. I said, officers, I'm a former prosecutor. I'm simply trying to speak as an accused in a criminal prosecution, and I'm being arrested by you officers on the order of these corrupt judges protecting these thieving attorneys. They said, well, everyone's got a right to make a record, and they left. And so we went out in the hallway. Mother and father were there, had the crowd, and here was down each aisle, maybe 20 or 30 police officers, all puffed up in their leather jackets like these. And I said, get them on camera. So I had the camera taking their picture, and they're turning their head, doing this. I said, who's in charge here anyway? Well, so I said, Sergeant, come here, I want to. Oh, I thought, boy, they couldn't wait to get out of that courthouse, Sandra.
Yeah.
Now, we pay them, I don't know what their salaries are now, but I know probably $40,000, $50,000 a year salaries to maintain order. That's what we pay. We do not pay them to protect a gang of thieving attorneys stealing innocent people's property in these sham proceedings.
Oh, I know.
And to get the public, Sandra, if I had a few more like my mother, she couldn't stand it. Which one?
She'd stand up and take care of the whole thing.
She was in Wallace Carson, would say, she says, arrest him, arrest him. Oh, I can't do that. And I have here, I've been at this over 26 years. I've been involved in this since 1980, latter part of 1987. I've got a letter here from our vice president now, from Joe Biden, Mr. Widener. Thank you for your letter regarding your complaint against attorneys Milton Brown and Norman Linstead and Lee Johnson. The Judicial Committee, he was the chair then, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He said the Judiciary Committee does not handle complaints against attorneys. However, if you wish to file a grievance against private attorneys, you should contact the Oregon State Bar. And he said, who's coming after me? The Judicial Fitness Committee, which is a joke, and Charles Turner, who was then the U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon. Now, I knew Chuck Turner. He and I worked out at the Y together, and still, oh no, they just give you that funny look when you try to tell them what's going on.
Well, it's good that you got a letter back. I mean, I wrote to the mayor, to all the city councilors, to the chief of police in the city, and never got a response. Not one response back from the letters that I wrote. Just letting them know what was going on in their city.
They said, keep us informed.
Yeah.
No, they will, on you, if you do, when the Bible where it says where they strain at gnats and they swallow camels, now you see where that came from. Yeah. Oh, you were going 2 miles over the speed limit. Get out of that car. We've got, but no, they're stealing millions of dollars of people's property, beating up the victims when they come into the courthouse. Oh, that's a civil matter. We can't do that, and they cover their eyes doing this. This is how far back this goes. This is findings of fact and conclusions of law. This I got involved. This is entered in May of 1988, signed by then Charles Crookham, then Circuit Court Judge, later Oregon Attorney General, and stating that, telling the requiring that the plaintiff, in this case Jeanette Kent, is entitled to specific performance, requiring defendants to turn over the assets of the estate as of May 23, 19, forthwith to plaintiff in accordance with the contract. That was entered. Now that was for Jeanette Kent. We spent years trying to get into court. She spent 10 days in jail for trying to speak in the courtroom. Because when they walk in the courtroom, they will say, "Now, Mr. Widener, I'm not going to hear anything out of you. If I hear one more word out of you, I'll have you in contempt," doing all of this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I said, people, you cannot. I said, if this is the legacy that you're prepared to leave to your children because you're so busy out playing golf, doing whatever else child's things you're doing, while innocent people are having their children and their property and their freedom stripped from them by a gang of treacherous, thieving bureaucrats and attorneys on the public payroll of many of them, I said, be sure and include spittoons when you make your funeral arrangements, if that's your legacy. I said, my father said, he said, leave it better than you found it, son. That's a duty of every generation in this country. That was what this country was about. I'm a historian. If they came to this country, leaving England was a lot like it is today here. Yeah. They were being run through phony proceedings, being stripped of their property, and they came to this country New England to found a new way of life, a Puritan way of life, a righteous way of life. That the no, everyone's not righteous, but the government is righteous. That's what they do. They're paid to maintain order. That's their number one duty, not to be going after political dissidents or whistleblowers, as they have me, arresting me violently, attacking me for trying to speak. And when they steal something from you, or when you try to get them to do what they're paid to do, recover stolen property, oh, that's a civil matter, they'll say. So it's that, people, that wake up. If you are, for your children's sake, for your posterity's sake, we all owe them an absolute duty to leave to them clean, limited, constitutional government. Was there anything more you wanted to add, Sandra?
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, when you were talking about the judge and what they say to you, that you can't make a record, which is exactly what you're there to do. I mean, the judge that I was before told me that he didn't want to hear anything that I had to say, and that whatever he said was what needed to happen. That was it.
Yeah,
he wouldn't even let me speak.
Yeah.
There were 30 people in the courtroom who heard him say that. It doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah,
and I said, well, am I going to be able to speak at trial? And he said, oh yeah, you can speak then.
No,
and that was a farce. I mean, that was just an absolute, unbelievable farce.
And that is the crucial element, people. If you have, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. If you have no remedy, you have no rights.
Yep.
If you have no remedy, you have no rights. Get that through your head. Now they speak, and I'm an authority. I've studied or practiced law for over 50 years. One of the judges used to clerk for me. The judges would come in and ask my advice when I went running the consumer fraud department. So I'm very, very knowledgeable about how that system is supposed to work and how corrupt it's become. And judges telling me they couldn't wait to get out of the system because of the corruption that was in it. And it was a shock to me, Sandra, because I had all of these judges as instructors, and they dripped with ethic. When you, in the court, in the classroom, if you'd ask them, well, how about if the attorney does, or the judge does this, or, well, they can't, that's unethical. No, they can't. So they always dismiss it as unethical, or well, they wouldn't do that. I mean, they're sworn. No, people. That was what I've seen. If someone told me that I would have lived to see what I have seen, I would say impossible. I tell people I was a 50-year-old, 30-year-old. I had no idea that a system could be as corrupt as it is.
Well, it's government for profit.
Yeah.
It's government for profit. That's what it's become. Whether it's getting a ticket or land issues or
anything. Regardless
what it is, it's become, what's the bottom line? How can we get the most money for this situation? I mean, the tow charges, the in-jail charges, the ticket that they finally gave. I mean, everything. It was
scandalous.
It was unbelievable.
Because and what you're doing, people, listen to me, listen to me. You are volunteering. When you go into an administrative court, listen to me on this. You've got to understand this. In this country, as I said, we have a single class of citizens, and we're supposed to have constitutional courts. That's what I learned in law school. A constitutional court, the parties are equal, the judges are neutral. So that you've injured me. It's a fact, but it's not a legal fact until I type it up, like in this complaint form like this, file it with the clerk of the court, then it's a legal fact. You have to deny what is in this paper, or it's deemed admitted. And if there's something that is disputed in what I have filed, you can litigate that disputed fact before a neutral judge. Now that's what all the judges I learned taught me. That's what I thought. When I went through college and law school, I said, what a wonderful way to go through life, to be able to civilly resolve your disputes through a civil arena and not have to go out and get a shotgun or a baseball bat and if someone steals it. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be civil remedy, civil process. We do not have that. This is a total, complete police state. This heavy-handedness on your part, a little traffic ticket. If you don't have your driver's license, they give you a ticket for
not having a driver's license.
And so you go in and they say, well, you explain it to the judge. What happened? I did this or did that. He said, well, when can you get it? I can get it. Well, or if some minimal fine to get your attention, but to have civil remedy. And this idea, I was out in Oregon City and watching the judge in action. There are just people coming in. That'll be $5,000, $10,000, just like a wheel, cranking this out to pay the salaries, these outrageous salaries to these thug police officers that are intimidating people, and they get a reputation in their department for being heavy-handed, and they're kind of deferred to. When I was helping Patricia Wishon over in Deschutes County, she had been set up by a con man and pushed and married, and then she was beaten and raped, all heavy-handed. She tried to divorce him. Her attorney went to work for the other side. Unbelievable. And she started fighting him. The police were coming in and arresting her in her house. In the courtroom, I'm charging the attorneys in the courtroom, and and the police are giving them protection and attacking the victims. Now, there is no place in the world that I'm aware of civilized society where that is going on. Years ago, I officed in the Georgia Pacific building in Portland, and I knew Robert Pamplin, the board chairman, slightly. I would see him on the elevators and that kind of thing. And we had a common friend. One of the fellows that I worked out with was with Georgia. He was a VP there. And when I went in to tell him what was going on, he said that was the reason that Georgia Pacific moved out of Oregon, was because of the corruption in the court system, people. And I said, that cannot be our legacy. That cannot, if you will tolerate that. I tell people I almost have as much contempt for those that tolerate it as those that commit it.
Well, I think more than anything else that we need to really start looking at what a constitutional court looks like, and have it be people-driven, back to the way that it was meant to be, rather than to allow what's going on now. They've completely run amok. Well, I mean, when the state can charge you with something, and then all the state employees can witness against you, I mean,
and this is
it's just all set up.
And it's all because you allow them. What you don't know is that when you turn yourself over to them, you say, okay, you let them appoint an attorney for you. That attorney, if he does what I have done, confronting them about how corrupt they are, he's no longer an attorney. They will cut him out of the system.
Yeah.
And for me, what is so maddening, Sandra, is knowing what I know about filing the complaint, making your injury a matter of public record, and then now with the internet, posting that on the internet. And then what you also do, you file the complaint. That's a charging document. It's an indictment. Your complaint is.
Right.
Then what the law provides is that you can move, as a citizen, you can move for summary judgment on your complaint. And you prepare an affidavit that details all of that. And then when you go into the courtroom and you file it, you give it to the other side. Now they have to deny what's in that affidavit before you go to court. This is the rule. People listen, I'm telling you this, it's a rule. They have to deny what you put in that affidavit before you go to court, or it's deemed admitted what you put in the affidavit.
And then, is that what happens?
Now it's happening.
Now it's starting to happen.
Yes, now it's starting. I'd catch the judges peeking out of the court. Is that Widener coming in here? No, but now the last few times I've been in court, Mr. Widener, because I'm not turning myself over, people. This is what please listen to me on authority on this. You are a citizen. You have rights. They that are working for the government, from the President of the United States on down, are public employees. They have duties of their public office that they must swear that they will faithfully perform. And their duties are to see that if they interact with you, your rights are observed. That's how we keep us civil. so we don't have to go out and shoot someone when they come in and take something. And to get the people to wake up, Sandra, I said, what more does it take? What more does it take? What you've heard from Sandra, what you've heard from me, violently attacking, and we're not the only ones. Pamela Gaston was horrible. They stormed her house. She was speaking out because they had taken Will Gaston's daughter away from her, and she was being abused sexually in these foster homes. And Will found out about that, and he went on a warpath about it. And Pamela joined in with him. She was a political activist out in the town where she worked. She did local work, something like you know, she has that local interest. And they stormed, came out with police surrounding her house. And she, you get out of here, and was tongue lashing him. And then in the court, when she tried to go in and speak, one of the judges had some character, said to go into court. When she went in, McMullen, the same one that attacked me, attacked her, arrested her, dragging her down the, and Dottie Blakemore, another one who was there, dragging her down the hall, the police were, and her pants came down. I said, my God, people, what does it take? These are public employees. We're citizens. We have rights. They have duties. But
and the sheriff, actually, correct me if I'm incorrect, but the sheriffs are actually voted into office. They're the ones that are supposed to be upholding our rights as citizens. That's their jobs. And they become so different
they become political whores. That's what they are, Sandra. The power brokers in these counties that take over and get the sheriff. I've gone through this over in Bend. One of the sheriffs, Bard Purcell, who was a police chief in Portland, and then was the sheriff. I used to work out with him at the Y, and he told me he couldn't wait to get out of the system because of he couldn't stand it, and so the corruption that came in was when they corrupted the judicial process. Because the sheriffs, when they walk into that courtroom, their eyes get big and round like everyone else. You know, they're coming in because they're ordered to do something, to report something, and everyone does this to these judges who just know people. Lee Johnson sitting up there, totally, completely corrupted. All of these complaints have been filed against him, but they ignore him.
Yeah. What do you think it'll take for those who are actually in the system and absolutely know the corruption that's going on to move out of that system and to start to really educate people as to how things can change and be, and be that change and help to be that change.
Yeah. Well, that's,
regardless what the situation is.
I'm a historian. Nothing like this was going on at the time of our American Revolution, where innocent people were having their children and their property taken. Now, if you messed with the king or one of the king's agents, you came up short. But the idea of taking people's children from them.
Yeah.
And what happened there, Sandra, when this Goals 2000, and when the federal government started funding all of this child snatching that's going on, if they take the child and they get so much money for federal money, I've heard them talk about keeping their numbers up. So, and they're taking these children that are so vulnerable and terrorizing them. And I'm seeing the results of that now. I don't know if you go around into these public places, but you see all these children in adult bodies. They're with their skateboards and their hats on backwards and all of these crazy things. When I was growing up through World War II and the Korean War, father was a fire official. But when we went to school, I said you had to have your shirt tucked in, your hair combed, and or if you went to school looking a mess, they send you home and to get squared away. And we would say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning in our class. Patriotism during war, and that they have eliminated all. They've taken all of that out. There's no dress code. There's no ability to. They're graduate and they can't even read. A lot of them.
Yeah.
They have no, and you can't read, you can't understand. So they stay children all their lives, and they stay dependent upon the system.
Well, and it's part of the dumbing down process
Yes.
as well.
This
You know.
is, and,
And drugging and dumbing down.
so I've been, being a former prosecutor years ago, and knowing so many of these, I've been banging on their doors for years, trying to get them to wake up to address this problem that we will not tolerate. They say, "Oh, Roger, this." No, we will not tolerate innocent people in this state community being victimized by public employees. That we will not tolerate. People get victimized by doing their stupid things, but not by public employees. Public employees, you have a duty to see that the rule of law is observed. And finally, I want to point out, I appeared in Judge Ellen Rosenblum's courtroom in 2001. I don't know that if you can see that picture there, but I'm here, and there's these 6 attorneys sitting there. One of them, the attorney for Milton Brown, was holding a file in front of his face so his picture wouldn't be taken in a courtroom. This is an event that occurred down in Salem when they had me locked up in the insane asylum for 70 days. I filed a habeas petition and was brought in a motorcade, shackled from the insane asylum into the courthouse. But while I was in there, this is my people standing out on the front steps of the Capitol, Free Roger Widener. These are crowds going through the state capitol. Now, the major media, none of this was on the major media. All of it should have been to alert the public to what is in fact going on. But for my parents, my father was the deputy chief of the Portland Fire Department years ago, and so I knew a lot of the firemen in public, and so thank God I had a support group, or otherwise I probably wouldn't be around myself today. I went back to, I was working with Jesse Lott for a while, and we went back to Washington, D.C., and met with his cousin, Trent Lott, when he was Senate Majority Leader. So the word is out. Everyone knows what's going on now in the public. They can't quiet it up. The only way that they can continue to do what they're doing is if you let them. If you let them. I said, people, this complaint, anyone can file it. You're a citizen. You have rights. If those rights are violated, you make it a matter of public record. Mm-hmm. Unless you do, it's just hot air. You're sharing with your neighbor. It's a fact, but it's not a legal fact until it's typed up, date stamped, and filed with the clerk of the court. Mm-hmm. And I said,
you tapped into something too that I think is really important. You said that if you hadn't had the support that you did, people who were really standing up for you and your rights and really listened and were witness to what was going on, that they probably would have put you away for a very long time.
Well, they did put me away I've been put away for 300 days, 70 in the maximum security of the Oregon Insane.
But I mean, never to be heard from again.
Well, and I thought a couple of times that was going to be because I've been attacked in my own house. The police have stormed my home, driven my parents out of their home. I said, outrageous, outrageous. And when I go to court, I can't find any of them that will stand up and defend what they've been doing. They tippy-toe
around.
Yeah.
And it's important to have those people who will be there and help support you. And I think anyone who comes up against something that is so outrageous and not lawful, you should have a support group, and there should be places where you can go and learn about
my mother's parents,
about what to do and how to do it.
My mother's parents were immigrants from Norway, and they were. My grandmother would literally beat it into my mother, how fortunate she was to be born here in the free society where you have rights, Tina, and she would lay that on her. My grandfather walked across much of the United States in the late 1890s. They were pioneer people. I said, and always, if there was where they came from, if it was abusive, they wanted freedom. They wanted to be able to conduct their lives in freedom. That's what this That's what our country is all about.
Yes.
Not a bunch of politicians in there doing what they are doing. Get out of your car, do this, I'm going to do this, and do this heavy-handed thing. I want to read the little time we have left. I sent a letter to Ellen Rosenblum. She was the one that was in the court where the attorneys were holding up the picture of their face. This is a picture of me confronting then Attorney General Hardy Myers. I was in a group with him 30 years ago called Campaigners, and so I knew him, and I confronted him about the corruption that's going on. Hardy, we won't tolerate this. And so I wrote to Ellen Rosenblum. I said, Judge Rosenblum, congratulations on your selection as Oregon's next Attorney General. I truly hope and pray that your selection as Oregon Attorney General will mark the reestablishment of constitutional government in Oregon, where the constitutional rights of all Oregon citizens to equal protection and due process of law are observed at all times when any Oregon citizen appears in any court in the state of Oregon. I'm enclosing for your review a copy of the notice to all public employees with the exhibits that I'm in the process of distributing to all Oregon elected appointed public officials. The notice and the attached exhibits detail the outrageous, scandalous, shameful criminal abuse I and other innocent Oregon citizens have been subjected to by corrupt attorneys and public magistrates over the past 24 years for attempting to speak in court under oath on the record, as I did in your court, filled to capacity with 40 of my supporters on February 21, 2001, about our criminal abuse. You heard me testify without challenge or dispute from any of the 6 attorneys present representing those involved in the theft of the $100 million Kettleburg estate and $1.5 million in New Wine Ministry property, about the scandalous criminal abuse others and I have been subjected to by the Oregon State Bar and its members for exposing their shameful criminal conduct in the theft of innocent citizens' children, property, or freedom in sham, often star chamber type proceedings. Attached for your review is the March 21st edition of the Oregon Observer containing the front page story, Widener Shows Cause, that describes what happened. That's what I just showed you, what happened in your court on February 21, 2001. The only response of Oregon State Bar Attorney Milton Brown's attorney, Charles Markley, was to hold a file in front of his face, while Jeanette Kent's turncoat attorney sat with giving a blank stare. I'm sure you remember the Multnomah County Sheriff Deputy present in court who threatened to arrest me when I got off the witness stand with the intent to arrest Norman Lindstedt for his part in helping steal all the Kettleburg estate assets. On June 20th, 2009, 60 concerned citizens from around the state met with your predecessor, John Kroger, in King City, Oregon, to convey our collective outrage at the out-of-control corruption in the Oregon legal system that was resulting in innocent Oregon citizens having their children, property, and freedom stripped from them in sham, often star chamber type judicial proceedings completely devoid of the equal protection and due process of law guaranteed to all Oregon citizens under both our state and federal constitution. As the 1998 Oregon Reform Party candidate for governor, and as a former director of the Consumer Fraud Department in the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, I have repeatedly declared, in the name of we the people of Oregon, the reestablishment of the courts as courts of constitutional due process, where the constitutional rights of all Oregon citizens to equal protection and due process of law are observed at all times when any Oregon citizen appears in an Oregon court. I am ready at any time to meet with you or any member of your staff to discuss how going forward the citizens of Oregon be assured that all of their constitutional rights will be strictly observed when any Oregon citizen appears in any court here in Oregon. And then on April 18th, 2013, from the Department of Justice, Office of the Attorney General, Dear Mr. Widener, I'm responding to your recent letter to the Attorney General regarding your notice to strictly observe the constitutional rights of all Oregon citizens, their employers, to equal protection and due process of law. Thank you for taking the time to reach out to us. I have taken the liberty of passing your concerns on to Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum. Please know that we are grateful to engage citizens like you who take the time to express their views and keep us informed. Now, you would think that I was talking about someone parking in the wrong parking spot, but still, this was an acknowledgement, and it's a giant step, and it's what all of us people, all of us, not just a few of us, But every citizen, if you're fortunate enough to be born in a free society, that is, you have a sacred duty to your children, to your posterity, to pass on to them clean constitutional government. Because if you don't, if you pass on to a police state and a mountain of debt, I said, people, that's when I said you should include spittoons when you make your funeral arrangements. if that is your legacy, that cannot be the legacy of our generation. And I've been doing everything in my humanly possible to confront those as a former prosecutor, to stop them, turn the lights on them, what they're doing, and to wake up the people, to let them know who they are. People in this country, you, a citizen, you have rights. They've all been stripped away from you. You have none now when you allow this kind of evil to take over your court system and pay their salaries and go in and obsequiously, oh yes, Your Honor, to these totally corrupted individuals that are doing this. So we cannot allow, that cannot be our legacy. Was there something more that you wanted to cover, Sandra? There's a couple other things I was going to show here.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, along with what Roger's saying, learn what your rights are. Because if you don't know what your rights are, you don't have any. And so it's an important thing to do, to learn what those rights are. Learn what the Constitution says. The Constitution is supposed to keep the government in check. And if they were abiding by what the Constitution says, they would keep in check. But see, the thing is most of us don't even know what our rights are because we don't know our own Constitution or our Bill of Rights. Yeah. And that's
that was taught.
That's a failing.
Yeah,
you know?
that was when they don't teach that. Now they should.
Yeah.
What I teach most people about the process, it should be learned your junior or senior year in high school.
Oh, absolutely.
Civil process. And that if you're injured, you have to make a matter of public record. It's not rocket science, but you have to put it down, who you are, who they are, what they've done to you, and the relief you're asking for, and file it with the clerk of the court. Make it a matter of public record. And then show up at court with the crowd of people.
Yeah.
I said, when my ancestors came across the plains, they didn't go out by themselves. No, if they went out by themselves.
And the Indians were out there too.
You would end up being a meal. So I said, no, you went out with a group of people. When the Pilgrims came across, they came in a group. You don't go by yourself. When you go down to the courthouse.
That's so you can circle the wagons.
That's it.
So that you can
from
be
danger.
protected. Yeah.
I said, and Jefferson said, and I see why he said it. He said, stay out of the cities because people lose their sense of danger in the cities. And I see that in myself, how naive I was. Thinking that the law, I learned all the law when I went to law school, that, well, if something happens, you go and you file a complaint, you go to court and you put on your case. They didn't tell you how to deal with corrupt, thieving judges and the police officers that are on the payroll.
No.
All of that. That was not taught in the school. Now, if you went into where my father, rough areas, they will tell you, yes, I was raised in privilege in a golden age. Had a father who was during World War II, he was a civil defense director for Southeast Portland, and then he was a training officer in the fire department. So I had all these firemen and veterans. I was so fortunate, but spoiled. I didn't realize that a system, you could have that and have this level of corruption that's going on. And I have here, like, I got a letter in 1991 from Senator Mark Hatfield. He says, thank you for your communication regarding the estate of Donald Kettleberg that you sent to my office on behalf of Jeanette Kent. Please accept my apology for the delay in responding. After a careful review of the materials you sent and contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Portland, it has become clear that the situation surrounding the Kettleberg estate is a matter which falls under the jurisdiction of the courts in the state of Oregon. Therefore, I suggest you encourage Ms. Kent to continue working with her attorneys as the case moves through the courts process. As a federal legislator, it is inappropriate for me to intervene in a matter before the courts. In the future, should you have questions about legislation before the U.S. Congress or problems with a federal agency, please do not hesitate to call. Now, that was in 1991 that I got this. from Ron Wyden, our current senator. He was a congressman then. Mr. Widener, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and meet with me at Sunnyside Unitary Methodist Church. It is important that I know what issues are of concern to you, and I appreciate your willingness to share your views with me. If I may ever be of assistance with matters dealing with the federal government, please do not hesitate to give me a call. Well, I said, people, Senator Wyden and Hatfield, I said, we are United States citizens. We're having our children, property stripped from us without any of our constitutional rights being observed, due process, equal protection. Those are federal rights that are being violated. And this is how they duck and dodge, trying to keep from, and I got one from Packwood too. Thank you very much for sending me a copy of your letter to Phil Stanford at the Oregonian. I certainly appreciate your taking the time to keep me informed. Please don't hesitate to write again. This was in 1993. So I said, what do we pay them for? When they comes up for budget times, they've got millions of dollars that they have to have staff and cover all of this. But what do they do? What do they do other than jacking up the taxes on us, running up a $16 trillion Tabb, Sandra? That's $50,000 for everyone. So people, the time is now for all of you that are listening to this, is to look to your children, look to your posterity, and say, I'm going to leave it better, like my father said to me. I'm going to leave it better for my children than it was left for me. That is the duty that you owe. In China, I'm a historian. They built the Great Wall to keep out the barbarians that were coming in. We have the barbarians, they just wear suits. And they're called bar members. Take the Barian off of it. We have the bar is doing the same thing. And you cannot sit by and allow that to happen, particularly from licensed people doing this. When I went through law school, and I was filled with idealism that you learn the law and that you can live free and be protected, and that is what had been turned upside down, and you're seeing this now with their unitizing with all of the treatment for people, trying to get them to in school, limiting what they're exposed to, so that you have these children that are in adult bodies. They grow up, their bodies grow, but they have no adult experience of taking care of themselves, doing all this. Like my parents, I said, from the time they were 10, they had chores that they had to do. they were dependent. My grandparents were dependent upon them for that. And I was so fortunate that I was given parents like that, and so many of them don't have that, and they suffer horribly for it. So, is there anything more, Sandra, that you want to think needs to be covered? Because I don't know how much time we have left, but I do have an open letter. I do have an open letter from Francis White. Is there something more you want to say?
Well, I'll just kind of say it as we go along.
Okay. That? Well, this is a letter my mother wrote to Gordon Hinckley, president of the Church of Jesus Christ, the Mormons, to Orrin Hatch, ranking Republican, Gordon Smith, United States Senator, Michael Mossman, now a U.S. judge, all other fellow Mormons, and concerned and alarmed citizens of Oregon. I'm the 91-year-old widow of Leo Widener, retired deputy chief of the Portland Fire Department. We were featured in the living section of the Oregonian in December of 1997 and have been featured in the Oregon Observer newspaper. My husband and I, he died in 1999, along with 3 of our 4 sons, Leo, Bruce, and Stephen, are Mormons. My husband and I, with 2 of our sons, Bruce and Stephen, have all served on church missions. My husband and I are also parents of Roger Widener, the 1998 Oregon Reform Party candidate for governor. For the past 11 years, my husband and I, along with hundreds, perhaps thousands of other shocked citizens, have witnessed firsthand with stunned disbelief and outrage the unbelievable abuse Roger and others supporting him have suffered at the hands of corrupt judges and police officers here in Oregon. The abuse has been in retaliation for their efforts in exposing the judicial corruption in our state and federal court system. Roger, after being repeatedly arrested and jailed, 290 days in all, sometimes violently in my presence, for speaking out about the corruption, has finally, after all these years, been allowed to freely testify in court without challenge or objection. Roger has testified under oath about the criminal conduct of attorneys and judges involved in the Kettleburg theft, the New Wine Ministry theft, and the abduction and sexual abuse of 7-year-old Melissa Gaston by employees of the Oregon Child Services Division. Not a single sworn criminal charge that Roger or others supporting him have leveled against those involved in this scandalous criminal behavior, either in court, on the air, or in the newspaper, has been questioned or disputed by those he has named. Yet still the lawyers and the police who control our courts, our streets, and now it seems every aspect of our lives, brazenly flaunt the rule of law and continue to openly protect disbarred attorney Milton Brown, who stole the Kettleburg estate, attorney Ken Schmidt, who stole New Wine Ministry property, and known pedophiles in the Child Services Division who have sexually abused Melissa Gaston. Roger, a historian, lawyer, and legal scholar, has repeatedly told us all that in this country, since the Revolutionary War, the citizens are the sovereign political authority. He said our founding fathers went to war to ensure that in this country, the citizens would be ruled by the rule of law and not by the whim of corrupt, despotic tyrants sitting in colonial royal courts. Roger said that both the state and federal governments in this country are created by constitutions. He said that if there was no constitution, there would be no federal government. If there was no state constitution, no state government. Roger said that both the federal and state governments are run by elected or appointed public officials, all public employees. Roger also said that under both the state and federal constitution, before the government can take anything from a sovereign citizen, that government must provide the citizen with equal protection of the law and due process of law. It is this equal protection and due process guarantee that is contained in the oath that all public officials take when they are sworn into office. The corrupt judges and police officers I have witnessed in our courts, instead of complying with their oath of office, are openly, publicly, and aggressively protecting the thieves and at the same time threatening, attacking, and jailing the victims of that thievery when they attempt to enter public courtrooms here in Oregon to make a record of their injury. Our prophet Joseph Smith said, "The day will come when the Constitution will hang as if by a thread, and if it's to be saved at all, it will be saved by the elders of the church." From the horrible corruption I have personally witnessed in our courts here in Oregon, that day has certainly come. It is time for all concerned citizens, particularly Mormons, heeding the advice of our prophet Joseph Smith, to speak up loud and clear to all public employees that we will not tolerate any, and she underlines that, any corruption by our public employees. Further, that we will demand by our constant scrutiny that our public officials and employees strictly follow their job description and comply with their oath of office. I sincerely ask you all to join with Roger and the rest of us fighting this corruption here in Oregon and around the country to help bring a swift and certain end to this dangerous and disgraceful situation in our court system and restore constitutional protection to all citizens of this country. Sincerely, Frances Widener. And she wrote that in 2001.
In 2001, wow. Progressive lady.
So, people, the time is now. The time is now for all of us to stand up together and say we will not tolerate any corruption by our public employees. That if you want to get out of the public job, if you cannot perform your job as you're paid to do it, then quit so someone else can. And I want to thank you for your time. And Sandra, thank you for being my guest. I appreciate that.
Yes.
And thanks so much.